Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When the Texas grid fails and the heat turns deadly, one man's solar-powered fortress becomes a beacon and a target. As neighbors sweat in darkness, envy ignites a war. Off-grid engineer Ronnie Wells won't back down. They want his power. He'll give them a fight. The Texas heat that summer felt like punishment. The kind of heat that warped fences, baked the asphalt until it shimmered, and made the air taste like copper. I'd been through plenty of heat waves in my life, but this one hit different, because while half the Hilltop Ridge neighborhood sat in darkness, my house glowed like a fully charged spacecraft. My panels caught every ounce of sunlight and turned it into power. My air conditioners hummed softly. My fridge stayed cold. Life was steady. Across the street, though, people were melting. By noon that Monday, the neighborhood Facebook page had become a digital riot. Photos of spoiled groceries, complaints about the lazy utility company, and one name showing up more than once: mine. Maybe Ronnie Wells could share some of that extra power, one post read. Another said, "It's wrong for one man to hoard energy while the rest of us suffer." I laughed out loud when I saw it. Hoard energy? I built this system myself. 3 Tesla Powerwalls, a diesel backup, and solar panels rated to survive hail. Every bolt was legal, every permit approved. My land, my grid. Then came the first knock on my gate. A tall guy in a golf shirt stood there holding a clipboard. Behind him, a woman in a sun hat and pearls. Karen Stanhope, the president of the Hilltop Ridge Estate Association. She didn't need to introduce herself. The smugness gave her away. "Mr. Wells," she began, her tone as dry as the soil, "we're facing a community emergency. Half our members have no power. Our HOA board voted unanimously to request that you provide temporary shared access to your system." I blinked, wondering if she was joking. "You want to, what, plug into my house?" Karen smiled like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. "You live adjacent to our development, and the HOA charter allows temporary resource sharing during critical infrastructure outages. Your panels generate more power than one home needs. It's only fair." I leaned against my fence post. "Ma'am, my house isn't part of your HOA. Never has been. The boundary line ends on your side of the street. I own this property outright, and this isn't a shared resource. It's my private power system." Her expression hardened. "We all live in one community, Mr. Wells. Your refusal could be seen as endangering your neighbors. I'll be contacting the Public Utilities Commission to file a complaint." I gave her a calm smile. "You do that, but make sure you mention the part where you're trying to tap into a private off-grid system. They'll love that." They left in a huff, but not before the clipboard guy snapped a few photos of my fence and solar racks. I already knew this wouldn't be the last time I saw them. That evening, while I grilled a steak on the back porch, a white SUV rolled past slowly, someone inside filming my property. I just waved at the camera. The next morning, I found an envelope stuck to my gate. It looked official. HOA letterhead, gold emblem, and a line that read "Emergency Directive." Inside was pure comedy, a demand that I provide immediate grid-sharing access for humanitarian relief purposes, signed by Karen herself and 2 board members. The letter even threatened fines, as if I were under their jurisdiction. I poured myself a cup of coffee, scanned the document again, and shook my head. "Hilltop Ridge HOA hereby requires..." It was the kind of line you'd expect from a medieval king, not a suburban committee with lawn envy. Still, I knew how this game worked. Bureaucrats like Karen didn't stop at letters. They escalated. I spent the afternoon running system checks, making sure every external port was locked, every cable mapped, every failsafe active. If someone tried to interfere, I'd know. My system was smarter than they realized. That night, as the temperature refused to drop below 90, I watched lightning flicker far off in the hills. The storm didn't reach us, but the power drama brewing across the street made the air feel charged enough. Somewhere in the darkness, Hilltop Ridge's houses sat in silence, their owners sweating and glaring toward the only house with light: mine. And I had a bad feeling that their desperation and Karen's ego were about to turn this blackout into something far uglier. The next morning started with a phone call from an unknown number. I picked up, still half asleep, expecting a spammer. Instead, I got the crisp, nasal tone of bureaucracy. "Mr. Wells, this is Karen Stanhope, president of Hilltop Ridge Estates," she said, as if I might have forgotten her overnight. We've discussed your situation at length, and the board voted that you are, in fact, within the operational boundary of the community. You're obligated to participate in emergency energy sharing. I took a slow sip of coffee. Karen, you might want to check a county map before making bold claims. My land was here before Hilltop Ridge even existed. Your boundary ends on the other side of the street. I'm not part of your HOA. Not by law, not by contract, not by any stretch of imagination. Her voice turned sweet, that fake honey kind of tone that usually comes before the sting. Mr. Wells, surely you don't want to alienate your neighbors. This is a crisis. We'll send an electrician this afternoon to inspect your connection ports. Don't, I said flatly. There is no shared port, no connection point, and no permission granted. My system is private. You show up here, and I'll treat it as trespassing. She exhaled dramatically. We'll see what the Utilities Commission thinks about that. Then she hung up. By lunch, I noticed a white pickup idling at the end of my driveway. 2 men in neon vests stood by the gate, one holding what looked like a tool case. I grabbed my phone and started recording before stepping outside. Can I help you, gentlemen? The older one spoke up. Hilltop Ridge Association Maintenance Team. We were told to check your auxiliary outlets for safety compliance. I smiled thinly. Nice try. You're on private property. You can leave now before I call the sheriff. One of them hesitated, glancing toward the road. Ma'am said, Ma'am doesn't own this land, I cut in, and neither do you. Get off my property. They exchanged looks, muttered something about just following orders, and retreated to their truck. I stood there until they drove off. As soon as they were gone, I went inside and pulled up my energy interface. I toggled the system into lockdown mode. Every external circuit isolated, every diagnostic ping logged. Then I set up a camera over the exterior panel just in case someone got creative after dark. That evening, while I was reviewing footage from my porch cam, I caught something interesting. Around dusk, a man in the same neon vest crept along the fence line, knelt near the external panel, and opened a small metal latch. Mine. The motion sensors kicked in, lights flared, and he bolted like a rabbit. I had it all on video, time-stamped, clear as day. I called the sheriff's department right away. Deputies arrived within 20 minutes, took statements, and reviewed the footage. They knew Karen by name. Apparently, she'd made enough noise in the past to be infamous. You're not the first person she's tried to manage, one deputy said with a smirk. As they were wrapping up, guess who pulled into my driveway in her silver SUV? Karen. She stepped out like she was attending a town hall meeting instead of walking into an active police report. Officers, she said brightly, I'm so glad you're here. There's been a misunderstanding. My contractor was simply checking for power irregularities that could endanger the neighborhood. The older deputy folded his arms. Ma'am, he was opening a private control panel on land you don't own. That's tampering. Karen's smile flickered. You don't understand. This is a matter of public safety. I crossed my arms. No, this is a matter of trespassing and unauthorized access to critical infrastructure. You and your crew broke the law, Karen. She tried to argue, but the deputy shut her down with a warning. Any further interference here, and you'll be facing charges. When they left, I stood by my gate watching her drive away, the SUV's taillights glowing red in the dusk. I'd seen stubborn people before, but there was something dangerous about Karen's brand of self-righteousness. It wasn't about power. It was about control. She didn't care that I had the right, the permits, the proof. She couldn't stand that I was independent of her rules. I uploaded the footage to cloud storage, printed copies for my records, and set another camera by the gate. If this was only the beginning, I planned to be ready for whatever public safety excuse she'd come up with next. For a few quiet days, I thought the storm had passed. The neighborhood's power was still out, but my phone stopped buzzing with unknown numbers, and the HOA truck stopped circling the street. I started to believe Karen had finally realized she'd hit a legal wall. Then, early Friday morning, a white city vehicle rolled up my driveway. Not HOA this time, Municipal Inspection Department, bold logo and all. A man in khaki pants and mirrored sunglasses stepped out, clipboard in hand. Morning, sir. Fire safety inspection. Got a report about an unsafe off-grid system operating in violation of code. I almost laughed. Let me guess. Hilltop Ridge sent you? He smiled politely. The complaint came from a local homeowners association. Yes. We're just following up. I invited him in. No reason to hide. My setup was cleaner than most commercial sites. The guy clearly knew his stuff. He checked grounding, battery ventilation, surge protection, and labeling. After 10 minutes, he straightened up, looking impressed. "Mr. Wells, this is textbook NEC compliance. Frankly, I wish more people did it right. You've even got redundant arc fault interrupters. There's nothing unsafe here." "Good to hear," I said. "You want copies of the certifications, Tesla Energy, UL, insurance audit?" He chuckled. "Already more than enough. I'll close this report out today." He paused. "For what it's worth, this isn't the first time that HOAs cried wolf. You might want to file something formal." I thanked him, watched the city truck roll away, and realized just how deep Karen was willing to dig. Filing fake safety complaints wasn't just petty, it was harassment. So I did exactly what he suggested. That afternoon, I emailed the county ombudsman's office with every document attached, permits, certifications, and the video of her electrician breaking into my panel. By Monday, the fire marshal himself called to apologize for the inconvenience. He even complimented the setup, saying, "You're running a safer system than most commercial generators in Austin." I took the compliment, but it felt hollow. I knew Karen wouldn't stop. She'd just changed tactics. Sure enough, that evening I got a call from a local news station. A reporter asked if I wanted to comment on community concerns over a potentially dangerous private energy facility. That phrase, community concerns, was pure Karen vocabulary. I gave the reporter a simple answer. "Everything on my property is legal, inspected, and insured. The only danger here is people who can't mind their own business." By sunset, the story ran online. The photo they used was one of my house at night, lit up, serene, surrounded by dark houses. The comments exploded. Some people called me selfish. Others called me smart. The local utility company even chimed in. "Off-grid systems are private property and not subject to HOA regulation." That line must have made Karen's blood boil. The next morning, 2 official-looking envelopes landed in my mailbox, one from the HOA's legal counsel, another from a law firm I didn't recognize. Both accused me of creating hazardous energy storage on residential property and causing undue risk to neighboring homes. It would have been funny if it wasn't printed on actual letterhead. I forwarded both to my lawyer, along with the inspection report proving full compliance. She replied with one line, "They're overreaching again. Don't respond. Let me handle it." By midweek, I was starting to sleep lighter. My cameras pinged often at night. Someone kept walking near the fence line with a flashlight. Too tall to be a kid, too confident to be a random passerby. I didn't bother calling the sheriff again, just adjusted the motion lights to stay on all night. If Karen wanted a war of endurance, she'd pick the wrong engineer. I had time, patience, and data on my side. It was just past midnight when my phone buzzed with an alert from the Powerwall app. Anomalous current draw. External load detected. The numbers didn't make sense. I was running lights, a fridge, and my office computer. Nothing close to what the system was reporting. Something out there was pulling juice hard. I threw on jeans, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped outside. The night air was heavy, still 90 degrees, and humid enough to drink. The security lights cast long white stripes across the gravel drive, and the hum of the inverter echoed faintly through the quiet. I followed the cable conduits along the fence until I noticed a patch of disturbed soil near the eastern corner, freshly shoveled, covered with mulch. My gut told me what I'd find before I even bent down. Sure enough, a thick black power cable ran right under my fence, snaking toward the neighbor's yard like a buried artery. I crouched and inspected the connection point. Someone had spliced into one of my exterior garden outlets, the ones meant for lawn tools. They'd stripped insulation, jammed a line in, and buried it. Crude, but effective enough to steal a steady current. Instead of cutting the cable, I went back inside and opened the control panel. The Powerwall diagnostics confirmed it. External resistance drop, continuous draw of around 3 kilowatts. They were running something major, maybe an entire air conditioner. I decided to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. I initiated a system test sequence, gradual load ramp, followed by a fault simulation. Within minutes, the inverter increased output just enough to trigger the failsafe in any poorly wired connection. Then came the flicker on the monitor, a sharp voltage spike, and immediate drop. A second later, a faint pop echoed across the street, followed by darkness. My cameras caught a brief flash of orange near the neighbor's meter box and the sound of frantic shouting. I shut down the test and called the sheriff's office. "You might want to send a patrol," I said. "Someone just tapped into my system and blew their own circuit." 10 minutes later, red and blue lights painted my yard. 2 deputies and a fire truck pulled up, sirens cutting through the night heat. Across the street, a small crowd gathered, half-dressed, sweating, confused. Smoke curled out from a garage outlet. The deputies listened as I showed them the buried cable and the video feed. Every frame had timestamps, GPS coordinates, and current logs from my system. They stared at the screen, then at the cable, then at each other. "Mr. Wells," one of them said slowly, "did you know they'd done this before tonight?" "No, but I had a feeling someone might try," I replied. "That's why I recorded everything." Karen arrived 20 minutes later, robe over pajamas, still managing to look self-important. She marched straight toward the officers, voice rising before she even reached the fence. "This is absurd. He's sabotaging us. My neighbors just wanted to cool their children off." The younger deputy stopped her cold. "Ma'am, we've got footage showing your neighbors trespassing and tapping into a private system. That's criminal tampering." Karen froze, then tried to twist it. "It was a temporary measure, mutual aid. The HOA authorized it." "Authorization doesn't matter," I said calmly. "You don't have jurisdiction here. And if you want to talk mutual aid, maybe start by asking instead of stealing." The deputies photographed the scene, rolled up the stolen cable, and took statements. One neighbor, the one whose house smoked, kept muttering that it was all Karen's idea. She glared at him like she could kill with a look. The fire crew confirmed minimal damage, burned outlet, nothing more. But they warned that the wiring could have easily ignited the wall if it had gone unchecked. By dawn, everyone was gone. The road was quiet again except for the faint hiss of my inverter cooling down. I sat on the porch steps watching the sky turn gray. The data logs were safe. The footage backed up to 3 cloud servers. For the first time, Karen and her HOA weren't just annoying. They were dangerous. They'd crossed from petty harassment into actual crime, and I had every bite of proof. The next 48 hours turned my quiet life into a media circus. The footage I'd shared with the sheriff's office leaked online. Not by me, but apparently through someone at the department who thought the world needed entertainment. By morning, the video had gone viral. A night vision clip of my yard, the buried cable, and Karen yelling at the deputies. Someone had added dramatic music, and the caption, "HOA president tries to steal solar power. Texas man teaches her a lesson." My phone didn't stop buzzing. Reporters called. Strangers messaged me offering free beer, generator parts, or marriage proposals. A local news van parked on the curb across from my gate. I tried to ignore the chaos, but when the evening news anchor used the phrase energy hoarding scandal, I knew I had to respond. I called a lawyer, Amanda Rivera, an energy law specialist I'd worked with years back on a contract job, picked up on the second ring. "Ronnie Wells," she said, "I saw you on TV. What the hell happened to your peaceful retirement dream?" "Karen happened," I said. "And now half of Austin thinks I electrocuted my neighborhood." She laughed softly. "You didn't, right?" "Unfortunately, no. But I'm about to sue someone." Amanda agreed to meet the next day. When she arrived, she spent 2 hours reviewing everything: permits, inspection reports, camera footage, the HOA letters, and the sheriff's reports. Her verdict was short and sharp. "They're screwed. We'll file for defamation, property interference, and unlawful tampering. We'll also get you a restraining order." That afternoon, she drafted the first set of filings. The language was beautiful, cold, factual, and lethal. She also recommended a media statement, a calm, professional response to the circus. I followed her advice, recording a short video on my porch. "My name is Ronnie Wells. I'm a licensed electrical engineer. My home is private property, inspected and certified safe. The recent trespassing incidents are under investigation. No further comment." The clip aired on 3 local stations and spread across social media within hours. The comments turned overnight. People who'd called me selfish were now defending me. HOA members began posting anonymously, admitting Karen had gone too far. One even leaked internal HOA emails, discussions about emergency access measures, and neutralizing non-compliant residents. It was like reading a manual on suburban authoritarianism. The sheriff called again 2 days later. "Just so you know," he said, "the DA's office is looking into possible charges: tampering, conspiracy, maybe even fraud. Looks like your HOA president's been forging some paperwork to justify her actions." By now, the HOA's Facebook page had gone dark, and Karen was giving statements to reporters from behind her closed gate. She claimed I'd endangered the community by running an unregulated energy facility. Amanda sent her a cease and desist within the hour. Late one evening, as I was checking the perimeter cameras, my security lights caught movement. Not intruders this time, but two men in suits walking up the drive. They introduced themselves as investigators from the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Mr. Wells, we're following up on a complaint about unauthorized electrical equipment, one said. I almost smiled. Let me guess. HOA complaint again? They nodded. Probably, but we have to check. I walked them through the system like a tour guide at a power museum. They inspected everything, took notes, and left laughing. Honestly, one said, if half the state built systems this safe, we'd be out of work. Amanda called later that night with news. The judge approved our restraining order. They can't step within 100 feet of your fence, she said. And any further complaints to state agencies will go straight into the harassment file. I sat on the porch in the heat, watching the news play the viral clip again. The anchor closed with a line that made me grin. Sometimes in Texas, the sun isn't the only thing with power. For a brief week, the neighborhood went quiet. Too quiet. The cameras showed no more prowlers. The HOA letters stopped, and even the usual gossip on Facebook went dark. I thought maybe the restraining order had finally done its job. But silence from people like Karen doesn't mean surrender. It means plotting. The first crack came from an unexpected source, a man named Blake, one of the HOA board members. He knocked on my gate one morning looking exhausted and oddly apologetic. Mr. Wells, he said, you don't know me, but I've had enough of Karen's insanity. You might want to see something. He handed me a thumb drive, emails, meeting minutes, the whole mess. She's been hiding things from everyone, even the board. I plugged the drive into my laptop after he left, half skeptical. What I found made my jaw tighten. Dozens of emails from Karen to contractors and board members, all written like some power-drunk mayor running a rogue utility. One thread read, we'll proceed with alternate access if the homeowner remains defiant. I'll handle legal cover. Another showed her instructing the HOA's treasurer to allocate funds for emergency grid linkage equipment. That sounded a lot like the buried cable operation. The best part? Attached scans of forged signatures, mine included, on fake community energy access agreements. It was blatant fraud. She'd even tried to submit one to the local utility commission. I forwarded everything to Amanda. Within hours, she was on the phone with the sheriff's office and the county prosecutor. Ronnie, she said, this isn't just harassment anymore. This is a coordinated conspiracy. She's impersonating a property owner and falsifying state documents. We're going to the DA. By the end of the week, the sheriff's deputies raided the HOA office. I watched from my porch as they carried out file boxes and computers. The whole scene looked surreal. The once powerful board now reduced to nervous bystanders in pastel polos. News vans arrived minutes later, their cameras zooming in on every grim face. That evening, the DA called Amanda personally to confirm the findings. Forged forms, tampered inspection requests, and an email trail leading directly to Karen's home computer. It was everything we needed. Meanwhile, the HOA crumbled from the inside. 3 board members resigned publicly, citing ethical concerns. A few homeowners started showing up at my gate to apologize for not realizing how bad it was. One woman even brought me cookies and whispered she threatened to fine us if we didn't. Sign her petitions. Karen, of course, doubled down. She showed up on local TV again, claiming the emails were fabricated by enemies of community order. The anchor looked barely able to hide a smirk as she read a statement from the sheriff confirming the authenticity of the documents. 2 days later, the police showed up at Karen's house with a warrant. My cameras caught the whole scene from across the street. Unmarked cars, plainclothes detectives, and Karen standing in her driveway, arms crossed, still arguing even as they read her rights. The neighbors watched from their lawns, phones out, recording every second. Amanda called me that night. They've charged her with conspiracy, forgery, and unlawful interference with critical infrastructure. It's not jail time yet, but it's serious. The DA's building a bigger case. I thanked her and poured myself a drink. The quiet hum of my solar inverters filled the evening, steady and clean. For the first time, I didn't feel angry, just tired. I wasn't fighting a person anymore. I was fighting a system that let people like Karen pretend their HOA charters were law. But if she thought she could bully her way into controlling private property, she was about to learn what real accountability looked like. The courthouse smelled like old paper and stale air conditioning, that dry institutional scent that only places of bureaucracy seem to have. I'd been in courtrooms before, but never as the plaintiff in a case that felt this personal. Karen sat across the aisle, expression frozen into that same smug composure she'd worn the first day she showed up at my gate. Only now the pearls were gone, replaced with a nervous little twitch at the corner of her mouth. The district attorney opened strong, laying out the charges: falsifying legal documents, conspiracy to commit infrastructure tampering, and attempted fraud. Then came the exhibits. My surveillance videos, inspection reports, logs from the Tesla system, and the chain of emails Blake had leaked. When the DA read the email where Karen literally wrote, "We'll connect by any means necessary," the courtroom fell silent. Amanda handled our civil case in tandem. Her presentation was clean and surgical. She showed the restraining order violations, the defamatory news statements, and the false reports filed under my address. Every document was stamped, time-coded, and irrefutable. Then she played the video of the buried cable and the power surge that followed. My favorite part. Karen winced as the sound of that faint pop echoed through the speakers. Her defense attorney tried to argue that the HOA had acted in good faith, claiming they believed they were protecting the community from energy insecurity. Amanda laughed quietly under her breath and rose to reply. "Good faith doesn't involve trespassing, theft, or forged signatures," she said. "It involves consent and law. My client gave neither." The expert witness from the state's Energy Commission took the stand next. He explained how the kind of tampering attempted by the HOA could have caused catastrophic failure, a house fire, an electrocution, even grid feedback. "It's the electrical equivalent of hijacking a fuel line," he said. Completely reckless. By the second day, the HOA's remaining members were squirming. Some gave statements under oath, admitting that Karen had assured them the homeowner wouldn't notice. One confessed they'd helped dig the trench for the cable because they thought it was authorized. Another broke down crying, saying she'd been threatened with fines if she refused. Karen's composure cracked only once, when Amanda projected the fake energy access agreement onto the courtroom screen, complete with my forged signature. "That's not my doing," she insisted, voice trembling. But the forensic examiner had already testified that the metadata tied the document to her laptop. It was over. The judge didn't need much time to deliberate. The ruling came down hard. The HOA was found guilty of unlawful interference with private infrastructure, harassment, and defamation. Karen herself was convicted of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to tamper with critical systems. The civil penalties alone would have bankrupted a small company. The courtroom murmured as the judge read the final line. "The Hilltop Ridge Homeowners Association is hereby dissolved as a legal entity pending state review. Ms. Stanhope is barred from holding any administrative office in residential associations for life." I didn't gloat. I just sat there, arms folded, letting the relief settle in slow. Amanda squeezed my shoulder. "That's about as perfect as justice gets," she whispered. Outside, the reporters were waiting. I gave them one simple statement. All I ever wanted was to be left alone. Maybe now we can all remember that private property actually means something. By that evening, the news cycle had turned into a wildfire. HOA president convicted after power theft scandal was the headline on every local outlet. Talk radio hosts were joking about me being the solar sheriff. Neighbors I'd never spoken to stopped by to shake my hand. One old man said, "You did what we all wish we could do. Stand up to those HOA tyrants." That night, for the first time in months, the entire neighborhood was quiet. No gossip, no cars parked across from my gate, no phantom complaints. Just the low hum of my own systems running exactly as designed. By late autumn, Hilltop Ridge was a ghost of its former self. The manicured lawns had grown uneven. The HOA sign at the entrance stood half-tilted, and the once proud gatehouse now served as a neighborhood bulletin board covered with for sale notices. The association's bank account had been seized by the court, and without its queen bee to micromanage everyone's mailbox color, the place looked almost peaceful. My property, on the other hand, had never been better. I'd upgraded the system during the downtime. New solar inverters, an extra battery array, a concrete pedestal at the end of my driveway with a fresh sign etched into it. Private energy system, federal violation to interfere under 24/7 monitoring. Trespassers will be prosecuted. It wasn't just a warning. It was closure carved in stone. A month after the trial, a rep from an Austin-based clean energy startup contacted me. They'd read about the case and wanted to use my property as a pilot site for autonomous microgrid testing, self-balancing, off-grid resilience, exactly the stuff I dreamed of. I signed the contract within the week. They installed new monitoring sensors, and I became a paid consultant on my own land. The first check came in at $100,000. Every morning, I'd walk out with a mug of coffee and look across the street at Karen's old house. The shutters were closed, the yard untended, and a faded for sale sign swayed in the breeze. No one had seen her since sentencing. Rumors said she'd moved to Florida to start fresh. Somehow, I doubted the Sunshine State would appreciate her management style. The sheriff stopped by once to return a flash drive I'd lent for evidence. He leaned against his cruiser, grinning. "You know, Ronnie, I've been doing this job 25 years, and I've never seen anyone fight an HOA and actually win. You might have made history." I chuckled. Wasn't trying to make history, just trying to be left alone. "Funny thing," he said. "People who mind their own business usually end up teaching the best lessons." When he drove off, the neighborhood fell quiet again. The sound of cicadas filled the evening air, mingling with the steady hum of my battery's cycling charge. For the first time in months, it felt like home again. Not a battleground, not a courtroom exhibit, just mine. A few nights later, another storm rolled through. Lightning flashing across the hilltops, thunder shaking the windows. I watched from the porch as the streetlights across Hilltop Ridge blinked out one by one. The power grid went down, plunging the neighborhood into darkness. My house, as always, stayed lit. Warm yellow glow spilling through the rain. For a moment, I thought I saw a few silhouettes at the end of the road, watching quietly from the shadows. Maybe they were neighbors who'd finally realized that independence wasn't selfishness. It was survival. I sat back in my chair, sipping coffee as the rain poured and my light stayed steady. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same sun that once fueled their envy now powered my peace. And for the first time since the whole fiasco began, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. Let them try again, I thought. This time, I'd be ready long before they even reached the gate.